The warm Sunday afternoon sunlight filtered through my kitchen windows, gilding the edges of my oak cabinets. I ran a dish towel over the countertop, slow and steady, still half unable to believe this house was truly mine. 3 years of overtime shifts, skipped vacations, countless nights eating cheap frozen dinners instead of going out, had gotten me here. Every scratch on the hardwood floors, every small repair I'd done myself, it all belonged to me. No loans from relatives, no handouts, just every dollar I'd scraped together with my own 2 hands. The doorbell rang sharp, and I already knew who it was. My mother Carol showed up unannounced most weekends lately, always circling back to the same subject. I drew in a quiet breath and unlocked the front door. She stepped inside without waiting for a full invitation, her purse slung tight over one shoulder, jaw already set in that hard, unyielding line I knew so well. "Where's Haley?" I asked, glancing over her shoulder toward the driveway. "She's waiting in the car. This conversation is for us first." Carol brushed past me and walked straight into my kitchen, like she owned the place. She pulled out one of my dining chairs and sat down, folding her arms across her chest. "Lila, we need to talk seriously about the house." My shoulders tensed. I braced myself for the same argument we'd circled for weeks. "Mom, we have talked about this. This home is everything I have worked for. Haley got this incredible opportunity." She pressed forward, ignoring my tone. "A luxury overseas brunch tour, all the best restaurants, beautiful coastal spots. All her friends post trips like that online, and she deserves to experience it too. If you sell this house, the profit will cover every single expense. She'll have memories that last her whole life." I stared at her, stunned. The request was absurd. Sell my only safe haven, the home I'd sacrificed years to buy, just so my 24-year-old sister could go take fancy food photos for social media. "I can't do that," I told her plainly, keeping my voice calm. "Selling would leave me with nowhere stable to live. This isn't some spare asset I can liquidate for a vacation. I built this life." Carol's face shifted. The polite mask slipped away, frustration boiling right up to the surface. "You are being so selfish. Family comes before your little house. Haley is your sister. You owe her this." "I owe her nothing," I said, my voice firmer now. "I worked every single hour to get this place. No one in this family gave me a cent for the down payment." That was when she snapped. She shot up out of the chair so fast it scraped loud against the kitchen floor. Before I could step back, her hand came flying forward. Something hard in her closed fist crashed directly into my mouth. Pain exploded across my jaw. I staggered backward, hitting the edge of the counter, tasting hot metallic blood filling my mouth immediately. My teeth throbbed sharp, raw, and stinging. I lifted one hand to my lips, and my fingertips came away wet and red. Shock rang through my whole body. I had expected yelling, lectures, guilt trips. I never expected her to physically strike me inside my own kitchen. "Stop it," I mumbled, blood seeping between my words. My lips felt swollen already. "Get out of my house right now." Carol did not look sorry at all. Her eyes burned with anger. "This is what you get for turning your back on your own blood. You think you are too good for us now that you own a home?" Tears blurred my vision, mixing with the metallic taste in my mouth. Adrenaline trembled through every limb. I pointed toward the front door. "Leave, now, or I will call the police." She cursed under her breath, spinning on her heels and storming toward the entryway. I followed close behind, heart hammering. When she threw open my front door, my eyes fell to the front porch. Haley stood there, half hidden behind the screen door, her cell phone held up high, recording every second of our fight. My stomach dropped. She had been capturing this whole thing. Carol marched down the porch steps toward their parked car, screaming threats over her shoulder as she went. "You will regret this choice. This isn't over between us." The car door slammed shut. I locked my front door immediately, twisting the deadbolt twice. I leaned my back against the solid wood, breathing hard, blood still dripping slowly from my split lip. The quiet Sunday sunlight still streamed through my windows, but nothing felt safe anymore. The quiet, ordinary life I had fought so hard to build had just shattered right inside my kitchen, and I had no idea what my family would try next. The second the Marlowe family's car peeled out of my suburban driveway, the quiet peace of my Sunday afternoon dissolved into unrelenting chaos. I slid down the front door until my hips hit the hardwood floor, one hand pressed tight to my swollen, bleeding lip, while the other shook uncontrollably. The metallic tang of blood lingered thick on my tongue, and the sharp, throbbing ache in my jaw pulsed in time with my racing heartbeat. For 3 years, this house had been my safe harbor, the one thing I'd built entirely for myself, free from family drama, free from endless obligation. Now the walls felt thin, fragile, like they could no longer shield me from the toxicity I'd spent my adult life running from. I pushed myself unsteadily to my feet and walked to the bathroom, flipping on the harsh overhead light that made my injuries look even worse. My lower lip was split open, dark red and puffy, bruising already blooming along my jawline. A tiny chip lined the edge of my front molar, a permanent souvenir from my mother's impulsive, furious punch. I ran cold water over my mouth, wincing at the stinging sensation that shot through every nerve in my face. As I patted my skin dry with a clean towel, my phone buzzed violently on the kitchen counter. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. I already knew who it was. No one else texted me with that kind of urgent, demanding aggression. When I checked the screen, a flood of unread messages from Carol and Haley stared back at me, piling up faster than I could read them. Carol's texts were long, rage-fueled paragraphs, calling me ungrateful, cold-hearted, a disgrace to the family name for prioritizing a house over my sister's happiness. Haley's messages were shorter, sharper, laced with petty victimhood, accusing me of ruining her once-in-a-lifetime chance to live a little and make memories worth posting. Again and again, they repeated the same lie, that I was selfish for refusing to sacrifice my stability for her fleeting luxury. I sank onto my living room couch, staring blankly at the screen, my chest tight with a mix of pain and disbelief. This wasn't just a silly sibling trip or a minor family disagreement. This was entitlement, plain and simple. The same entitlement I'd endured my entire childhood, where my hard work, my struggles, my sacrifices never mattered half as much as Haley's smallest whims. I'd always been the responsible one, the oldest daughter who worked overtime, saved every penny, never asked for a dime from anyone. Haley had always been coddled, allowed to quit dead-end jobs on a whim, spend her meager paychecks on fast fashion and fancy dinners, and still expect the rest of us to bail her out when she wanted more. This trip wasn't a necessity. A quick scroll through Haley's Instagram confirmed exactly what I'd suspected. She'd been posting mood boards for months, sun-drenched coastal cafes, overpriced gourmet brunch spreads, luxury hotel balconies, all captioned with vague wishes for a life upgrade she had no way of affording on her own. The entire trip was for social media clout, for curated photos to make her look wealthy and carefree online, and my mother had been fully prepared to destroy my life to make her fantasy come true. Before I could process the anger bubbling up inside me, my phone rang, Carol's name flashing across the screen. I hesitated, then answered, holding the phone an inch from my ear, bracing for another verbal assault. "You have exactly until tomorrow morning to change your mind," she snapped immediately, her voice sharp and unapologetic, no trace of guilt for hitting me. "If you don't list that house by noon, you're cutting off your own family. No more holiday dinners, no more family support, nothing. You'll be alone for the rest of your life, and that's on you." My jaw ached worse at the tension of clenching my teeth. "You assaulted me in my home, Mom. You punched me until I bled. And you're still threatening me?" I asked, my voice quiet but steady. "I disciplined you for being stubborn and selfish," she retorted, cold and unyielding. "You needed to wake up to your responsibilities. Family is everything, Lila. You're too young and stupid to see that right now." She hung up before I could reply, leaving me staring at a dead call screen, numb. I didn't hesitate to call Mia, my best friend since college and the only person who'd ever seen the full extent of my family's unfair treatment. She answered on the first ring, her warm, steady voice cutting through the fog of my panic. I didn't hold anything back. I told her about the fight, about the punch, the blood in my mouth, Haley recording the entire incident on the porch, the endless stream of harassing texts and threats. I told her about the ridiculous reason for it all, a fancy overseas brunch trip for social media likes. Mia's tone shifted instantly from calm to furious. "Lila, that's not discipline. That's domestic assault. You need to get that jaw checked out today, and you need to start documenting every single one of their threats. These people are unhinged." As a part-time paralegal, she knew exactly how quickly toxic family disputes could spiral out of control, and her urgency grounded me. I booked an emergency dental appointment for the next morning, my hands still shaking as I typed out the confirmation. By the time night fell, my phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Carol had moved on from text messages to long, ranting voice notes, each one more dramatic than the last, claiming I'd abandoned my family, that I'd forgotten all the sacrifices they'd made for me growing up, sacrifices that never once included paying for my college, my down payment, or any of my adult expenses. The worst part was knowing she was already spreading her version of the story. I saw it late that night when I finally caved and checked my family group chat, one I'd muted months ago but never left. Aunts, uncles, distant cousins were already weighing in, commenting on Carol's vague posts about ungrateful children and selfish greed breaking families apart. No one asked for my side. No one wondered why I'd refused to sell the home I'd built with years of grueling work. I locked my phone and set it face down on the coffee table, staring out my dark front window at the quiet suburban street I'd loved so much just hours earlier. The neighborhood was peaceful, streetlights glowing soft gold over trimmed lawns and parked cars, but I couldn't feel safe anymore. My own family had turned my sanctuary into a battlefield, and they weren't done fighting. Just as I tried to calm my racing thoughts and process the day's trauma, my phone lit up again. This time, it was a tag notification from Facebook. I tapped it open with a sinking heart, and my blood ran cold. Carol had posted a lengthy public status, painting me as a cruel, selfish daughter who'd chosen material wealth over her own sister's happiness. Dozens of family members were already commenting with sympathy and condemnation, all before I'd gotten the chance to say a single word in my defense. The balance I'd tried so hard to maintain, the fragile truce of keeping my family at arm's length while still holding on to hope for some small piece of connection, was completely shattered. There was no going back to normal now. And as I stared at the hateful comments piling up beneath my mother's post, I realized with brutal clarity, their harassment was only just beginning. I woke up Monday morning with a throbbing jaw and a heavy, hollow feeling sitting in my chest. My lip was still swollen, and the small chip on my molar sent sharp twinges of pain every time I closed my mouth. The dental appointment I'd booked the night before was scheduled for mid-morning, and I stuffed printed screenshots of my family's threatening texts into my purse before heading out. The dentist confirmed the cracked tooth, stitched my split lip, and told me I would need a follow-up procedure to fix the molar. Every charge landed on my own insurance. Another cost dumped on me because of my mother's outburst. On the drive back home, my mind kept circling. I could not keep living like this, jumping at every phone vibration, afraid my front door would crash open at any moment. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed my father's beat-up sedan parked along the curb. Roger sat behind the steering wheel, hands resting loosely on the wheel, staring toward my front porch. My stomach tightened. I knew he had heard everything. Carol never kept her anger private for long. I hesitated for a long minute before I walked up the sidewalk. He got out of the car when he spotted me, his shoulders slouched, the tired look of a man who had spent decades avoiding conflict. He did not march toward me angrily the way Carol did. He moved slowly like he was afraid to set me off. "Lila," his voice was quiet. "Can we talk for a few minutes out here? I don't want to make a scene inside your house." I stopped on the bottom porch step, keeping the screen door latched between us. Fresh fear pricked at me. I did not want him crossing my threshold, not after what had happened Sunday. "You know what Mom did," I said flatly. My lips still stung when I spoke. Roger shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "She lost her temper. That doesn't make it right, but she was frustrated about Haley's trip. Can't you find some middle ground? You don't have to sell the whole house. Maybe you could lend them some money instead." A bitter laugh caught in my throat. Even now, his first instinct was to ask me to give more. No real anger toward Carol, no demand for an apology, only pressure for me to compromise my safety and my savings. "Middle ground?" I repeated. She hit me in my own kitchen until my mouth bled. "There is no middle ground for that. I am not handing over my hard-earned money so Haley can post fancy brunch photos overseas." My voice cracked, and all the built-up stress spilled over. The tears I had been holding back rolled down my cheeks. I was tired of being the reasonable one, the one who always adjusted to keep the family peaceful. Roger's eyes fell to the ground. He could not meet my gaze. "I don't want to see everyone torn apart." "Then you should talk to her," I told him. "Not come here and pressure me." He had no real answer for that. After a few more awkward sentences, he climbed back into his car and drove away, leaving me standing alone on the porch. That conversation killed whatever small hope I still held that my father would step in and protect me. I could not rely on Bled to keep me safe. I would have to protect myself. I called a local locksmith right then. A couple hours later, a man showed up at my door, swapping out every lock on my exterior doors. The deadbolts clicked solid when he finished, a small, tangible layer of safety. Next, I looked up local family attorneys and booked an initial consultation. Paying for professional advice would eat into my savings, but it was a cost I could no longer avoid. Sitting in the small law office that afternoon, I laid out every detail. I explained how I had saved for years for my down payment with zero financial help from my parents. I showed the attorney screenshots of texts, told him about the assault, Haley's recording on the porch, and Carol's threats. He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. "Legally, they hold zero claim to your property. The house is 100% yours. That does not mean they will stop harassing you. Family members can make your life miserable even without legal standing." Those words settled heavy inside me. I could win on paper, but the emotional war would keep raging. I decided to keep him on retainer for further work. Writing that check hurt, yet it felt like taking back a little bit of power. When I got home late in the afternoon, the sun hung low over the neighborhood. I walked through each room of my house, double-checking every lock. I pulled up my Ring camera application on my phone to review recent footage. My breath caught. Parked across the street, partially hidden behind a large oak tree, was my parents' car. Carol and Haley sat inside, engine idling, watching my house. No knocking, no calling. Just sitting there, observing every movement inside my property. A cold chill ran down my spine. They were not going to simply go away. The sight of my mother's car idling across the street lingered in my mind long after dusk fell. By the time darkness swallowed the neighborhood, they had driven off, but the feeling of being watched refused to fade. I kept my Ring camera feed open on my tablet beside me while I ate dinner, glancing over every few bites, half expecting headlights to reappear at any moment. The new locks clicked firmly every time I tested them, yet physical hardware could not shut out the gossip already spreading through my extended family. Messages trickled into my inbox all through Tuesday. Relatives I spoke to only on holidays reached out, most of them repeating Carol's version of events without bothering to hear mine. My aunt sent a long text saying I ought to be kinder to Haley's dreams. A cousin left a voice message telling me family harmony mattered more than real estate. None of them mentioned the blow to my mouth, the blood, or the way Haley had secretly recorded our fight. They only saw the story my mother had carefully constructed. Midweek, Roger showed up again. This time he did not park across the street. He knocked gently on my front porch after work, hands stuffed deep inside his work jacket pockets. I kept the screen door latched, cautious, still raw from our last talk. He told me Carol had been arguing nonstop at home, that Haley stayed locked in her bedroom crying over the canceled trip plans. He looked worn out, weighed down by months of household tension. "I know she made a mistake," Roger said, his voice low, "but everyone is so upset. If you would just sit down and talk with them in a neutral public place, maybe you could clear up all this misunderstanding. No yelling, no fists, just a calm conversation." I hesitated. Part of me ached to repair the damage. Deep down, I still wanted my family to understand where I was coming from. Mia called me later that night and warned me against it. She said Carol and Haley would twist every sentence I spoke. Still, I foolishly believed I could reason with them. Against my best friend's clear advice, I agreed to a short meeting at a quiet coffee shop 20 minutes from my house. We met on Saturday morning. Sun streamed through large cafe windows, the smell of roasted coffee hanging thick in the air. I sat at a corner table with my water glass, ready to lay out my side calmly. Carol and Haley arrived a few minutes late. From the second they sat down, their body language was defensive. I explained again how every dollar for my home came from my overtime work. I described the dental damage from the punch. I told them the overseas brunch vacation was not an emergency. Everything I said got warped instantly. Carol interrupted constantly, weeping about Haley's broken heart. Haley sniffled and acted like I was destroying her future. Before I realized what was happening, Haley had her phone resting flat on the table, angled perfectly to record our whole discussion. I did not spot it until halfway through our talk. By then it was already too late. I left the coffee shop feeling defeated. Nothing had gotten resolved. Instead of clearing my name, I had handed them fresh material to manipulate. On my drive home, my phone buzzed nonstop. Short audio clips from our cafe conversation were circulating among family members. Haley had edited out every part about the assault and my financial sacrifice. Only my firm refusals remained. To anyone listening, I sounded cold and unfeeling. Mia called me the second she heard the edited audio shared by one of our mutual acquaintances. Her frustration was palpable over the phone speaker. I warned you this would happen. They were never coming to listen. They came to collect content. I gripped the steering wheel tight as I pulled into my driveway. Guilt burned hot inside my chest. I had wanted to believe there was still a path back to normalcy, and I had been wrong. My small misjudgment had given my family powerful new ammunition. The damage was already spreading further than I imagined it could. I spent the rest of that weekend replaying the coffee shop meeting in my head. The edited audio kept getting passed between relatives. People who had known me since childhood were sending disappointed messages. A few stopped texting entirely. The smear campaign worked exactly the way Carol intended. I stayed inside my locked house, barely scrolling social media, my jaw still aching on cold days. Even my work focus started slipping. Small mistakes slipped into my project spreadsheets because my mind kept drifting back to family drama. Roger reached out to me late Sunday evening. He asked if he could stop by alone, without Carol or Haley trailing behind. I was wary, but I let him onto my front porch. The evening air was cool, crickets chirping in neighboring yards. He leaned against the porch railing, exhausted, like a weight he had carried for decades was finally starting to crack. Bit by bit, information spilled out. For many years, Carol had been diverting household money toward Haley. Extra cash for clothing, concert tickets, spontaneous shopping sprees, money from their joint checking account that Roger never challenged. He had watched it happen, stayed silent, to avoid explosive fights inside their marriage. It was not a new problem. The demand for my house was just the largest escalation of that same old pattern. For years, Haley spends more than she earns, Roger admitted, his voice heavy with shame. Carol keeps bailing her out. This fancy overseas trip was just the next big thing. She convinced herself your house profit was the simple fix. I stood there stunned. This was never only about one brunch vacation overseas. It was a lifelong pattern of unequal favoritism. My sister's every impulse got subsidized, while every single one of my goals I had to earn completely on my own. My mother hitting me was not a one-time loss of temper. It was the ugly peak of something that had been building my whole adult life. Why did you never say anything? I asked him, my throat tight. Roger stared down at his scuffed work boots. I did not want the house to blow apart. I thought if I stayed quiet, things would calm down on their own. That passive choice had let everything grow worse. He knew Carol spoiled Haley. He knew how badly she wanted that trip. Yet he never put his foot down until harm was already done to me. The realization grieved me deeply. I mourned the loving, fair family I had spent so many years hoping to have. That fantasy was crumbling completely. A few days later, an official envelope arrived in my mailbox. The return address was the local county courthouse. My fingers trembled as I tore open the seal. Carol was exploring a small claims petition. Her claim stated that implicit family investment money had gone toward my home. There were no receipts, no bank records, no actual proof. It was a hollow manufactured argument, but even a weak claim still forced me to expend time, mental energy, and attorney hours to defend myself. I forwarded the documents straight over to my lawyer. Over our virtual call, he sighed. There is almost zero chance she prevails, but she gets to make you go through the process. That is part of her goal. She wants you worn down until you choose to give in just to make the stress end. After I hung up, I wandered into my kitchen. This was the same room where my mother had struck me. Sunlight streamed across the wooden countertops once more. But now I understood clearly. This conflict would not fade away with apologies or compromise. They wanted my asset, and they were willing to weaponize family reputation, edited recordings, and even the court system to pressure me into surrender. I sank onto one of my kitchen chairs, overwhelmed. The full scale of what I was up against crashed over me. I was entering one of the most dangerous phases of this fight, and my own father could not bring himself to openly stand beside me. The threat of small claims court hung over every part of my daily routine. Work grew harder. My lingering dental discomfort flared up whenever I was under heavy stress. Some distant cousins sided with Carol entirely and cut off contact with me. Only Mia stayed rock solid in my corner. Roger began avoiding my calls. When I texted him, replies came slow and short. He was caught between his wife and his hurt older daughter, and he chose to pull back rather than pick a side publicly. Isolation closed in around me. Late one weekday evening, I sat at my home desk reviewing paperwork my attorney sent over. Medical records from the dentist, screenshots of hundreds of threatening texts, ring camera footage. Building my defense took hours of tedious sorting. Every document was proof of how far my family would go to get what they wanted. Even so, Exhaustion whispered tempting lies in my ear. What if I gave them some money? Not sell the whole house, just enough to make all this harassment finally stop. The thought terrified me. That was exactly the trap they wanted me to fall into. I picked up my phone and dialed Roger. He answered after 4 rings. His tone was guarded. Carol truly believes she did nothing wrong, Roger told me quietly over the phone. She says you forced her hand by being stubborn. She will not apologize. She thinks an apology would reward your selfish behavior. Those words landed like cold stone in my chest. I had clung to a tiny fragment of hope. Some quiet part of me waited for my mother to wake up, to feel remorse for drawing blood in my kitchen. Now I accepted the hard truth. Remorse would never come. In her mind, her violence had been justified. After I ended the call, I paced through my empty house. If my own mother could not recognize she had hurt me, reconciliation was impossible. I could not keep chasing her love and approval while paying for it with my home, my savings, and my physical safety. I sat down at my laptop and began typing a formal no-contact letter. I laid out clear boundaries. No unannounced visits, no harassing messages, no attempts to rally relatives against me. If they wish to communicate, everything must go through my attorney. I read the draft over multiple times. My fingers hovered over the send button. Part of me hesitated. Cutting off your family is a heavy, sorrowful choice, even when they are toxic. Before I could finalize and send the document, my Ring camera phone alert popped up on screen. Motion detected out front. It was nearly 11 o'clock at night. The street outside was quiet, most neighboring houses dark for bedtime. I tapped open the live feed. Haley stood on my front porch under the bright porch light. She banged her fists hard against my front door, over and over. Each heavy knock echoed loud through the inside walls of my home. She shouted my name, voice raised, demanding I open up and talk to her. Lila, I know you are inside. Come out here right now. She kept pounding, rattling my solid front door. No Carol with her this time, only Haley, fueled by frustration and resentment. My heart hammered. It was late, dark, and she was agitated. I kept every door bolted shut. I did not step anywhere near the entryway. Instead, I stood back in the living room, watching the live camera feed, my breath shallow. There was no telling how far her anger would push her this late at night. I had my no-contact letter ready, but this emergency was happening right now on my doorstep. Haley continued hammering against my front door for several long minutes. Her shouts carried across the quiet suburban street. Neighbors' porch lights flickered on one by one. I stayed far from the door, my hands shaking, and dialed the non-emergency police line. I explained the situation. Unwanted late-night disturbance on my private property, prior history of family violence, and I had full Ring camera footage recording every second. 2 local patrol officers arrived about 10 minutes later. Their cruiser rolled slowly down my street with lights dimmed. When Haley saw them, her rage deflated fast. She stepped away from my door, stood on the edge of my front lawn, defensive and sullen. Officers spoke to her outside. I remained safely inside my locked house, speaking to them through the cracked open upstairs window. They documented the whole incident, took my camera footage as evidence, and warned Haley to stay off my property. She got into her car and drove off, but not before throwing one furious glare back toward my house. Having official police documentation was a critical step. Before this, I only had personal videos and text messages. Now there was an official paper trail confirming harassment on my doorstep. I sent copies of the police report straight to my attorney first thing the next morning. Over our virtual meeting, my lawyer and I assembled a complete evidence package. Dental treatment records showing my chipped tooth and split lip, every threatening text message, Sunday's assault ring camera clips, the coffee shop manipulated audio, and this new police incident report. Piece by piece, we built a factual record of everything I had endured. This material would back up any formal legal action we took. 2 days later, Roger texted me privately. He wanted to meet briefly at a small gas station parking lot halfway between our homes. No Carol, no Haley, only him. I agreed, though I remained cautious. When I pulled into the lot, he was leaning against his old sedan. He looked worn down, stressed from constant fighting at home. He would not confront Carol publicly. He was still too afraid of blowing up his marriage. But in private, he gave me critical pieces of information. He told me exactly how much money Carol had funneled to Haley over the years. He described how Carol planned to show up at my workplace if the small claims route failed. He shared these secrets quietly, begging me never to reveal where I got the details. I cannot stand up to her in front of everyone, Roger admitted. But I cannot watch her destroy you completely either. It was a complicated, imperfect form of support. He would not stand beside me openly. Yet he gave me advance warning about their next possible move. That small secret help shifted things. I was no longer completely blind to their plans. Back at home, my attorney finished drafting a formal cease and desist letter. The document demanded Carol and Haley stop all harassment, uninvited visits, smear campaigns, and threats of legal action without valid grounds. If they violated its terms, we reserved the right to pursue further remedies. Certified mail would deliver it to their residential address. Shortly after the letter went out, Roger texted me again. Carol had opened the certified envelope. She had read every word of the cease and desist. She was furious. She was enraged about the police report from Haley's late-night visit. According to Roger's warning, my mother was now actively plotting to appear at my office building to make a scene. The threat was no longer only against my home. Now she wanted to attack my career. News that Carol intended to visit my workplace sent a cold rush of anxiety through my whole body. My job was my main source of income. It paid my mortgage, my attorney bills, my dental repairs. If she caused a public disturbance in my office lobby, my professional reputation could suffer real harm. I could not take that risk. First thing the next workday morning, I scheduled a quick private conversation with my manager. I did not go into every graphic family detail. I told her I had a toxic family situation escalating, and that one of my relatives might show up at the front desk to create conflict. I shared copies of the cease and desist letter and police report. I asked for security to be alerted in advance. My manager listened carefully. She assured me building security would be on notice, and they would escort the relative off property immediately if she appeared. Having that safety net in place lifted some weight off my shoulders. Meanwhile, the cease and desist letter was formally received by Carol and Haley. Instead of backing down, Carol doubled her efforts. Her small claims petition moved through the county clerk's preliminary review process. My lawyer submitted all my supporting documentation. Proof my down payment came exclusively from my personal savings. 0 monetary contributions from my parents. After reviewing filings, the clerk rejected her petition. There was no factual basis for her claim. The case would not move forward to court. When Carol learned her legal attempt had collapsed, she lost her main formal weapon. Cornered and bitter, she played her final remaining card. She began reaching out to old family friends and distant extended relatives one-on-one. She called them, sent long messages, retold her one-sided story, trying to rally more people to pressure me into surrendering my house for Haley's trip. Her strategy was social pressure. If enough people begged me to give in, she hoped I would cave from the burden of public judgment. Some contacts bought into Carol's narrative at first, but several old acquaintances asked me for my side of events. I sent over a condensed, respectful version of my evidence package. Once they read about the physical assault, police report, and years of financial favoritism, many changed their stance. Some chose to stay neutral and keep out of our family conflict entirely. A handful messaged me privately to say they believed my account. Slowly, battle lines were fully drawn. Not everyone supported me, but Carol no longer held total control over the family social circle. I paid a heavy emotional toll through all of this. Even winning small battles drained my energy. I grieved constantly. I was defending my home and my safety, yet I was losing pieces of the family I grew up with. Some relatives chose Carol's side permanently. Those relationships would never be repaired. Haley's dream overseas brunch trip fell apart completely. Without my house sale profit to fund it, she could not afford those expensive restaurant reservations and luxury coastal hotel stays. Her carefully curated social media travel fantasy crumbled. She posted bitter, vague online posts about unfair life circumstances, never naming me directly, but every family member understood who she referenced. One evening after work, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset. I thought the worst pressure was behind us now that the court claim was dead. Then my phone pinged. A text message popped up from Carol's number. It was short, unapologetic, and direct. I am coming over to your house one final time. We will talk face to face, and this ends today. No question, no request. A statement. My stomach twisted. I knew this was not going to be a peaceful resolution. The final confrontation was heading straight for my front door. I read Carol's text multiple times, staring at the screen. My pulse sped up. I had the cease and desist letter, police records, legal representation. Still, knowing my mother intended to show up at my property filled me with sharp apprehension. I double-checked every deadbolt. I pulled up my Ring camera app, made sure recording was enabled at maximum resolution. I texted Mia and warned her what was happening, keeping her updated so someone knew if things spiraled out of control. Less than an hour later, headlights rounded my street. Their family car pulled into my driveway. Carol climbed out from the driver's seat. Haley got out on the passenger side. Both of them marched toward my front porch. I stayed firmly inside. I would not unlock the main door. I stood behind the closed screen door, speaking through the mesh barrier, camera capturing every word and gesture. Carol stopped on my top porch step, jaw tight. Open this door. We need to speak in person. Everything between us goes through my attorney now, I answered. My voice remained steady, though my hands trembled slightly at my sides. You have no right to demand entry onto my property. This is about family, Carol raised her voice. You cannot hide behind lawyers forever. Then she laid out all the same old arguments again. Haley deserved her special trip. I was selfish for clinging to my house. I owed them sacrifice because they raised me. I laid every fact out clearly for the recording. I earned this home entirely through years of overtime work. No family money paid for my down payment. You hit me inside this house until my mouth bled because I refused to liquidate my life for a social media vacation. For years you have poured money into Haley's impulses while every one of my goals I funded alone. You have never once apologized for hurting me. Carol refused to take any responsibility. She shifted blame entirely onto me. If you had just cooperated, none of this would have ever happened. Haley stood beside her mother, adding bitter remarks about how I had ruined her dreams. Neither of them showed the smallest hint of remorse. Unexpectedly, a second car pulled up along the curb. Roger stepped out. He had followed them from home. For years he had stayed silent, avoided conflict, looked away. But this time he walked up onto my porch and positioned himself between Carol and the screen door, separating me from them. Enough of this, Roger said loudly. His voice shook, but it was firm. You cannot keep doing this, Carol. You struck Lila inside her own home. You filed a worthless court claim. You harass her nonstop. This has gone far too long. I will not stand by and watch it continue. Carol looked stunned. She had never heard him speak against her in front of the girls. Anger flared across her face. She argued with him, but Roger held his ground. He would not back down this time. That public rebuke did not magically fix everything. There was no heartfelt reconciliation moment. Carol was not suddenly transformed into a gentle, understanding mother. She was furious that her husband had finally spoken against her. I took advantage of the pause to deliver my final boundary. There will be no more face-to-face conversations between us. Do not come back to my house. Send all communications to my lawyer. If you violate the cease and desist order, we will take further legal steps. Leave my property now, Carol shouted one last angry retort. But with Roger opposing her publicly, and all my evidence stacked against her, she had no real power left. She turned and stormed back toward their car. Haley followed closely behind her, throwing one last resentful glance toward the house. Roger lingered on the porch for a moment, giving me a small weary nod. Then he got into his own sedan and drove away. Their vehicles vanished down the street. The neighborhood returned to quiet. I was alone on the inside of my home. The fight was technically over, yet victory did not feel joyful. Heavy emptiness settled over me instead. I had defended my home, but my family was broken beyond repair. Once the taillights disappeared around the corner, I remained standing behind my screen door for a long time. My hands still shook. The final confrontation was finished, but healing would not arrive overnight. I activated full no contact. I blocked Carol and Haley across every platform: phone calls, text messages, social media. I set my email filters to automatically divert any incoming messages from their addresses straight to trash. Our direct interactions were completely shut down. Roger reached out to me separately, through a brand new email account he created, so Carol would not discover our communication. We established strict limited boundaries. He could message me occasionally, but no passing messages back and forth to my mother or sister. No sharing my personal information. No attempts to convince me to reconcile. I would not allow him to drag me back into that toxic dynamic. Our relationship would stay distant and guarded. It was not the warm father-daughter bond I once dreamed of, but it was safe. I finished my remaining dental treatment. The cracked molar got repaired. My lip healed completely, though I still carried faint memory of that Sunday kitchen violence. I began weekly trauma counseling. Processing years of unequal family favoritism, plus the physical assault, took time. Some days I felt strong and confident. Other days grief washed over me without warning. I grieved for the loving mother, the supportive sister, the harmonious family I had always wanted, but never truly had. Some relatives chose Carol's side and cut all ties with me permanently. A few others sent quiet, cautious check-in messages from time to time. They kept their distance, respecting my boundaries. I did not push for close relationships with them. After everything I went through, I valued peace far more than large family gatherings. Months rolled by. My small single-family home stayed mine. The mortgage payments got paid on time every month. The hardwood floors still bore minor scuffs and marks from years of my life. On quiet Sunday afternoons, I would stand in my kitchen, the same room where my mother had once struck me. Sunlight filtered through those same kitchen windows. Now the space felt calm and secure. No yelling, no threats, no fear hanging in the air. I washed dishes, made coffee, cooked simple meals for myself. The space belonged only to me. Haley's fancy overseas brunch trip never happened. Without the windfall from selling my house, that whole fantasy collapsed. From what little Roger shared, Haley stayed frustrated and bitter. Carol still blamed me for everything that went wrong in their household. They never sent apologies. They never took accountability for their actions. I did not win a perfect happy ending. I kept my home and my mental safety, but the cost was high. I lost the family I grew up inside. I learned you cannot force people to love you fairly, no matter how badly you wish for it. My old fear of ending up completely alone faded slowly. I built my own kind of support system. Mia remained my closest friend. We had dinner together regularly, laughed, decompressed after hard work weeks. I started small new hobbies, reconnected with a few old work acquaintances. I built a new life, not built on blood ties, but built on mutual respect. One Sunday evening, I leaned against my kitchen counter, sipping warm tea. Outside, the suburban neighborhood glowed under soft sunset light. I was not triumphant. I was simply at peace. I had stopped chasing my mother's approval. At last, I valued my own safety and happiness more than the broken family I could never fix.